I had no idea that was coming, but I should have. Holy cow. Oh, that's a lot. Hey, so as Chris said earlier, my name's Nick Tuttle. I'm so excited to be here this morning. I really am. I am excited to share what God is doing in our lives. I'm excited to share what God is doing here at Rocky Fork this week, and I'm just honestly just excited to have the chance to be here with you guys this morning. So I want to start off this morning just kind of telling you, as Chris said, we're missionaries. We've been raising support and building our support team and going to churches and doing all this stuff, getting ready to try to transition to moving to Ireland. We'll be living just north of Galway on the west coast of Ireland in a town called Uachtarard is the plan. So this week we'll figure out whether or not the housing stuff is how that's going to look, which is me jumping ahead of the story a little bit. But so there's a lot of stuff going on. And I just want to kind of bring you guys up to speed before we talk about what we're going to talk about with Jesus. And so here's the short version. In 2017, we had just transitioned to a church in Illinois. We had got moved in. Everything was great. It's a good church, and not all of them are, right? Like, we can acknowledge that some churches have difficulties, and sometimes it makes for hard living when you're trying to serve somewhere. But we got there as a great church, good leadership. We'd been there for about a month, and I looked over at my wife, and I said, hey, I don't think this is it. Like, I feel like there's some change coming, and I have no idea what that means. And of course, like every good ministry wife, she goes, what do you mean this isn't it? Right? Okay, you understand, you get the look, like, I don't want to make it look too bad because she'll get mad at me later, but like, she was not excited about this declaration. And so we went through that, and then a couple of months later, Mom passed away. She'd been battling cancer for about 8 years. So we're transitioning through that, and we spent about 2 or 3 years praying through what this thing that God was doing in our lives looked like. We had no idea. And one night in 2019 in November, she looked over, just paused the TV. You guys ever watch something dumb on Netflix at nighttime? Anybody? That's what we were doing. And she pauses the TV from the stupid show we're watching. She says, hey, and pardon, this is her language, not mine. I just want to prepare you ahead of time, okay? She said, what if we just sold all this crap and went and did missions? And we had spent 2 years praying through this idea of what does this look like? God, what are you doing? What do you want? We want to do what you want. And we looked through everything. We looked at campus ministry. We looked at preaching. We looked at other youth ministries. We looked at all of these different things, and there were pieces of them that were right, but none of them were it, if that makes any sense. And when she said that, hey, buddy, when she said that, it was like all those pieces that we had been collecting through this time of prayer and study and research all fell into place in this incredible way. And so anyway, there's a lot more to this story, but fast forward, first Sunday in March 2020. Okay, you guys tracking with me here, like COVID timeline? You with me? All right. First Sunday in March 2020, we get up in front of the church that we're currently serving at. COVID had been a thing. It was kind of becoming more of a thing. Like, everybody's kind of going, what's going to happen? We don't know. Oh, this is crazy. But as of that Sunday, nobody had shut down. It was all business as usual. And so we get up that Sunday morning and say, hey, we're fixing to transition. We had talked with the leadership. They all knew it was coming. Everything was cool. And we got up there and said, hey, listen, so we're going to stick around and do all of our summer stuff. We'll be here till the end of June, but beginning of July, we're going to move back to Macon, which is where I'm from. We're going to move back to Macon, and we're going to start this process of raising a support team full time, because we felt like that's what it's going to take to get us there, is to hit this thing full time. And so we announced that Sunday, expecting to do all of our summer duties and continue doing the worship ministry stuff that I was doing, the youth ministry stuff that I was doing. And then the next Sunday, because we're living in Illinois, the whole world shut down. Like, everything. And I'm sitting there that Sunday going, God, what are you doing? Like, what is going on here? Like, hey, you heard our announcement, right? Like, you understand. So, and then, we get a couple of weeks in and we're going, man, are we really dumb? Like, is that what happened? Like, did we hear God right? Like, is this okay? And we got into all that stuff of doubting and stuff. And so fast forward to now, right? Okay, we started 2020, COVID hit, Super tons amounts of panic there for a couple of weeks, trying to figure out what that was all going to look like. We thought that the big mountain in our way was going to be support raising, right? I mean, during COVID, the economy looked weird. Nobody knew what was coming. And we thought, man, this support raising thing, that's going to be the thing. Like, we don't really, and our team, they said, Contact Missions, the group we're with, and they said, we don't know. We've never seen anything like this. Like, it could take you 2 or 3 years doing this with individuals, And I'm thinking in my head, that's a really long time to live at your dad's house, right? Like, with all 4 of your kids and your wife, like, that's a lot to ask of anyone, right? And we bring the noise. Like, there's a bunch of us, and we are not quiet people. And so turns out, though, that the support raising thing we were done with in around a year. It was this incredible thing that God did where we couldn't meet with people individually because everywhere was closed, right? But we could meet with churches, and we've been doing youth ministry for 20 years, so we knew a lot of churches, right? Like, we had worked with a lot of churches at camps and served at different churches and things like that. And so normally, like, our other teammates have like 2 or 3 churches that are a part of their support team, right? And then the rest of their support comes from individuals. And currently, we have like 20-some churches that are a part of our monthly support team. And it's just this crazy thing that God did in the middle of all this. And we thought, oh, we have no idea where this is going to come. And God said, I got it. It's cool. Here you go. Check that out. And so we were done in a year, and we thought, cool, here we go. And then we started into the visa process, right? And I don't know if you've ever spent any time on government web pages, but it apparently doesn't matter if it's our government or other governments. They're all horrible. Right? Like, all of the web pages that the governments are in charge of are all awful. And so it was like this Easter egg hunt that the devil had created. That's really that's the best way to say that, I think. It was rough, right? And so we get our application in. We're thinking, okay, cool. They told us, hey, listen, you might get denied the first time. Don't worry about it. We'll appeal, yada, yada, yada. But then you get into the process and you get the denial, right? You get that first, you send it in, you've checked all your boxes, you did everything, and then they say, no, we're not going to let you do this, and here's our reason why. And so the appeal process took us, the application, the whole visa process ended up it's taken us so far right around a year. And when we were planning this for me to preach today and to share this sermon with you guys, what I had when we were planning that was hope. That's what I had. That's what I had, is hope that God was going to show up, and hope that God was going to do something, and hope that one of these days, right? I mean, we thought, maybe end of October or Christmas break, if we get denied on the appeal, we'll have to reapply. Like, this could really be a long process. We were prepared for another couple years, and Wednesday, I was sitting at Como Smoking Fire. Anybody love some Como Smoking Fire? Because I do. That place is awesome. Anyway, that's free advertising. Sorry, that's probably weird. It came from my stomach. I apologize. I didn't. As you can see. Anyway, let's move on. Let's not talk about my belly. So I'm sitting there Wednesday waiting for a buddy of mine to show up. We had a lunch date planned, and we had turned our appeal in here around a month ago. We'd sent the letter in, and it was this big, scary ordeal, right? Like, we did the whole appeal letter, and we sent it July 2nd, right? And then it went to Germany. I paid like $107 for this expedited shipping, right? I went through the Postal Service. I'm not going to talk trash on any Postal Service things, but it didn't go well. And so it ended up, the letter, and you just got to hear this because it's nuts. It went from Macon, where we mailed it out of, and then it went down to Memphis. I'm like, okay, cool. Went to Germany. I'm like, sweet, it's in Germany. It's going to go to Ireland next, of course. It went to Iceland for like a week and a half for no reason, right? And then the thing is really scary and tricky on this is, like, there's a deadline for this, right? It was the 18th of July. And so went to Iceland for like a week and a half, sat there in customs forever. And then I'm like, well, that's really weird. It'll surely go to Ireland next. Nope, went to France. Don't know why. Have no idea why. And then after being in France for another week, it ended up in Ireland. And then it sat in customs in Ireland for had to have been another week and a half. And so all said and done, it took like 23 days for this letter that was supposed to take 2 or 3 to get to Ireland. By the time it got there, it was the 25th, right? So I'm thinking, man, are we in trouble? right? The deadline was the 18th for this. And so we had done some things ahead of time. We sent a letter and with a listing of the postal shipping so that they could kind of see, like, I don't know what this is. Like, here it is, please. And so then we sent an email to the visa desk and we're like, hey, listen, we intend to appeal. You need to know that. That's what the lawyer said that they needed to know by the 18th. We intend to appeal. The letter's coming. The post office is weird. By the way, if you're shipping internationally and you want to go expedited, go straight to FedEx because that's where it goes when it leaves the country anyway. So that one's free. There you go. If you're shipping Transformers to Germany, who knows? Anyway, that's a weird one. Anyway, so it gets there. And it was late, and so we hadn't heard anything back. And it's been been several weeks, and so we kind of kept checking it. We were checking the mail or checking the email every day and looking, and we thought, well, we missed the date, so probably they're going to deny the appeal, and we're going to have to reapply, and there's going to be this whole thing. But it's cool because we like Rocky Fork, so that's fun. Trying to keep your chin up, and Jess has this habit of she just assumes it's going to go bad, so that when it does, she's okay, right? Because if we get our hopes up and then it goes bad, everybody cries for a week, right? It's terrible, and so that's kind of where we were, right? And I'm sitting there on Wednesday at Como, waiting on my buddy to show up, and I look down at my phone and I've got like 49 emails. I'm like, I didn't even check that today, and I knew we were getting kind of close to time, and I was like, well. Oh, holy crap. Sorry, again, probably not appropriate, but that's what my thought was, right? Like, that's what I said. I'm like, okay. You guys are used to Mark and Brant. This is not going to be that, just a heads up. And so I'm like, holy cow, there it is. Like, it says visa pre-clearance. Like, that's what I'm like, that's the thing. And so I clicked on it, and it said, hey, we're just sending you this email to inform you that we've made a decision about your appeal. The decision is included below. And I scrolled down, and there was the little icon down on your phone where it shows the attachment, and it was like a Word document or whatever, and the little icon was there, and underneath it just said approved. Isn't that awesome? So I know that's a long time telling you this small part of the story, but as I got to thinking, like, how cool is it? And I remember saying last week, like a week or two ago, like, wouldn't it be cool if we could stand up here on that Sunday when I get to preach and say, hey, listen, God showed up and we've been approved. Our visa is approved. Well, you know what? That is the case. That is the case. God showed up and we've been approved. Like, we get to go. Now the trick is they're talking about trying to get us over there before the end of the month when the school starts. So now we went from slow to let's go. Like, all of a sudden, right? It's insane. So anyway, I wanted to share that with you guys because this week, we're going to be talking about missions. And I think that there are a lot of times that we get missions confused with good deeds, good works, right? If you look at, and I just want to, real quick, I don't want to go over on time because, there are people that are waiting to come in for next service and stuff. But I want to ask you a question, okay? I want you just to think in your heads. And actually, if anybody would want to shout some stuff out, that would be okay, all right? Like, I know that's probably not our norm, but this one time, it's going to be okay. So here's my question. Here's what I want you guys to think about. What's the first thing that comes to mind when you think about missions? Overseas, okay? Absolutely. What? Water? So like wells in Africa type of thing, right? Okay. What else? What else you got? Homes, Casa por Cristo, great mission, right? Okay, what? Medical stuff, absolutely. Okay, what about places? You're talking about medical, you're talking about homes, you're talking about wells. I mean, you're thinking third world stuff usually, right? Okay, but what you don't think of when you think of missions usually is first world countries, right? You don't think about countries that have infrastructure. And I think what we forget when we do that, and I think we all do it, right? Like, I do it. When I think of missions, I think of the people that I know that have done missions. I think about those third world places and those good things that they're doing, and they're all things that the church should be doing. But when I think about those things, what I miss is that there is a difference between being poor and being spiritually poor, right? Does that make sense? Because a place like Europe has tons of infrastructure and they don't need our money, right? But did you know that Europe as a whole, as a continent, is 97% lost? That means that 3% of the entire continent has a relationship with Jesus. Isn't that crazy? That means that of 750 million people in Europe, over 700 million of them don't know Jesus. That's insane, right? They've got all of the stuff this world can buy, but they don't have Jesus. Those giant cathedrals, all of that rich Christian heritage, the only way they keep those cathedrals open is by selling tickets to tourists. The average church attendance in Ireland on a Sunday morning is 20 people. Blew me away. Okay? And so I think when we look at this, Jesus says in Acts chapter 1, verse 8, he says, "You will be my witnesses in Judea, Samaria, and the ends of the earth." Jerusalem, Judea, Samaria, and the ends of the earth, right? So Jerusalem's where they were. Judea and Samaria is the surrounding areas, and then the rest of the world, right? So God says, you're going to be my witnesses in all of these places, whether it's where you live or your neighboring communities or across the ocean, right? Like that's the mission of God. The mission of God is to seek and save the lost, to make disciples, and to teach those disciples how to make more disciples, right? So know Jesus and love like him, right? You guys are with me? You're tracking? That's the mission of the gospel, right? And so we're all called to ministry. We're all called to missions, right? Whether some of us are called locally, right? And there is just as much good to be done locally as there is globally. But some of you are called to global missions. And and my theory is on global missions is if you're not called to be a goer, you're called to be a sender. Right? Like, man, let's do all the stuff locally we possibly can, but does it have to be either or could it be both? What if what we do here locally expanded and broadened and became just an extension of what we do globally, right? Like that it's all tied together. We've been doing youth ministry for 20 years, right? In local churches all over the Midwest, right? And to me, you think, oh man, missions, that's crazy. But to me, really, I'm still just doing ministry. Like I was in all those churches here, I'm just doing it over there, right? So it's not that I'm changing what I'm doing, I'm just changing where I'm doing it and how I look at it. And I think that's the small little tweak that we as an American church need, right? So, to that end, I want to tell you a story, right? This week we're going to look at missions. We're going to really dig in, and I want to look at this story here. We're going to be looking at the missionary journeys of Paul, and I know I've only got a few minutes, but we're gonna hit this thing hard and fast, and then we're gonna be done. But we're going to look at a story out of the Gospel of Mark real quick. And what I really want to do is more than I don't want to tell you the stories we're going to be telling you all week about Paul. What I really want to do is establish, like, here's what missions really looks like, and maybe we've made it too complicated. Okay, you with me? Here it comes. So, just to give you a little bit of context, here's where we're at in the story. Jesus just got done preaching a massive sermon, dealing with and ministering to thousands of people, right? He hops on the boat to go across the way. He's taking a nap. There's a big storm that comes, right? You guys remember this? And Jesus, the disciples are wetting their pants again and freaking out, and that's what they did. And they wake Jesus up, and he's annoyed, and he just goes, "Knock it off," to the wind, right? And it stops, and they're all going, "Oh, well, you could do that? Like, we just wanted you to grab a bucket, man. Like, that was cool," right? And they were scared to death, right? This is one of the scariest nights of their life. And they get over where we're going to pick up here in chapter 5, and it's the middle of the night. It's 3 or 4 a.m., right? The darkest of the dark, right? It is the dark before the dawn, way before the dawn. It's scary, it's dark, it's crazy. And they pull up to this region. And I want to, as we read through this, just kind of imagine you've been up for days. You're exhausted. You're at the end of your rope, and your world has just been drastically rocked by a miracle that your buddy just pulled off, right? Okay, are you with me? Like, this is some crazy times for these guys. Chapter 5, verse 1, here it comes. They went across the lake to the region of Gerasene. Now, in some of the accounts, you'll hear Gadarene, some of them you'll hear Gerasene. Doesn't matter, they're the same area, right? One's a region, one's an area. It's just a different name for the same thing. When Jesus got out of the boat, a man with an impure spirit came from the tombs to meet him. Now, imagine you're the disciples, and you're getting your leg out of the boat, and then this dude, who doesn't have any clothes on, and is violent in nature and appearance, comes running at you guys. You got 1 foot out of the boat. If I'm the disciples, I'm going, it's cool. Good. I don't know, I'll just stay on the boat. Jesus, looks like you've got this, right? That's what's going on. And so, verse 3, this man lived in the tombs, and no one could bind him anymore, not even with a chain. I mean, think about that amount of power, right? These guys in this area of Gerasene were terrified of this guy. No one could bind him anymore, not even with a chain, for he had often been chained hand and foot, but he tore the chains apart and broke the irons on his feet. Whoa. Okay, right? Everybody's with me when I say ew, right? No one was strong enough to subdue him. Night and day among the tombs and hills, he would cry out and cut himself with stones. Okay? So what we've got is this guy he's been running around for years, unclothed, attacking people, cutting himself with stones, screaming in the middle of the night. This guy is their boogeyman. Okay? You with me? Verse 6, when he saw Jesus from a distance, he ran and fell on his knees in front of him. He shouted at the top of his voice, "What do you want with me, Jesus, Son of the Most High God? In God's name, don't torture me." For Jesus has said to him, "Come out of this man, you impure spirit." Actually, in some of the other versions, it says, he begs him to not send him away. Verse 9, then Jesus asked him, "What is your name?" And now you got to imagine, it's 4 a.m. It's dark as sin. It's the middle of the night, and they've had a long day. They're terrified. They were terrified before they got there. And this dude says, and I think like a multi-voiced voice, right? Like this is the creepiest thing you've ever seen on any movie. This is this dude's voice. He's like, "I am Legion," right? Like this is scary. "My name is Legion," he replied. And again, like I don't know that we can get that here right now in our churches in daylight. Like this was terrifying. He says, "My name is Legion," he replied, "for we are many." And he begged Jesus again and again not to send him out of the area. And this is where it gets weird. Here it comes. A large herd of pigs was feeding on a nearby hillside. The demons begged Jesus, "Send us among the pigs. Allow us to go into them." And he gave them permission. And the impure spirits came out and went into the pigs. The herd, about 2,000, that's a lot of pigs. 2,000 pigs. There's a herd of pigs. I've never seen a herd of pigs. Have you? Anyway, I've seen pigs in pens. Never seen a herd of them. I don't know what that looks like, but there's a lot of pigs. I'm going to say that 4 more times before we move on. Verse 13, he gave them permission. The impure spirit came out one of the pigs. The herd was about 2,000 in number, rushed down the steep bank into the lake and were drowned. And what we call this technically in Bible terms is that these pigs committed suicide. Okay? And see, in my brain, it's more fun if this was a cliff, because then all the pigs go, whee, right, off the cliff, and they plunk, right? And then there's all these little pig butts with the little curly tails sticking up out of the water like a bunch of weird bobbers, right? That's what's happening in my brain, okay? Sorry. I'm just letting you in. This is a window into my thoughts. Here it is. And so they were drowned. Well, it's a weird thing that they asked to go in the pigs, and then they're like, right? Like, I don't know what that was all about. So, verse 14, those tending the pigs ran off and reported, they squealed on him, this in the town and the countryside. And the people went out to see what had happened. And you know what you call these guys that are tending the pigs? This one's great too. You know what you call these guys that are tending the pigs? These are sow boys. Right? That's pretty bad, isn't it? Yeah. Yeah, my kids, I told them, anyway, I was telling this story, and they're like, "Oh, don't tell the jokes." And you guys are welcome, all right? And so, okay, so those tending the pigs, the sow boys, ran off and squealed in the town to the countryside, and those people went out to see what had happened. Verse 15, when they had come to Jesus. Now, imagine this. This is the guy that they feared more than anything in this world, right? He was a power to which they couldn't handle it. There was nothing they could do with him. All of their effort, all of their power, all of their chains, all of this stuff, none of it could handle this guy. And they show up to see what had happened and talk to Jesus, and this is what they see. When they came, verse 15, to Jesus, they saw the man who had been possessed by the legion of demons sitting there dressed and in his right mind, and they were afraid. You know what they were afraid of? They weren't afraid of the guy anymore. They were afraid of Jesus. Because if Jesus could handle with little effort what they couldn't handle with all their strength, it scared them to death. They didn't know what to do with him. And you may think, well, that's kind of silly. Like, he fixed their problem. Why didn't they go like, hey, sweet, Jesus, thanks, stick around, let's hang out, right? Why did they ask him to leave, which, spoiler alert, is what they're fixing to do. The reason is because they didn't know what to do with him. They were terrified of him. They saw it, they were impressed, but they also didn't want to hang out. So verse 15, they see him, the man had been possessed with the legion of demons, sitting there dressed and in his right mind, and they were afraid. Verse 16, those who had seen it told the people what had happened to the demon-possessed man, and told about the pigs as well. Sorry, it's still me. Anyway, then the people began to plead with Jesus to leave their region. Now, I want you to really focus in on this next passage, because this next passage, verse 18 to verse 20, is the point of what I want to talk about this morning. So I've told you all that story to get to this one thing, okay? Here it is. As Jesus was getting into the boat, the man who had been demon-possessed begged to go with him. And if there was anything in this story that makes sense to me, it's that line right there. He begged to go with Jesus. And think about it. Dude doesn't have any friends. Right? He's been running around in the tombs naked for a couple of years. He's not going to be able to get a date, right? He's got zero going for him on the job prospects, right? Nobody wants to hire this guy. What if this junk comes back? They don't know what's going on. The only guy that he knows, the only friend he has, is Jesus. And so when it says he begged to go with him, I want you to have that in mind. Like, this is not like, hey, do you mind if I come? This is like, Jesus, I don't know anybody else. I'm not sure I can do this on my own. Could I please come with you? And you think, well, of course Jesus said yes, right? Because Jesus is just concerned about keeping us happy, right? Oh, nope. That's not what he's concerned about. He wants to get you home. And if it takes a little bit of pain to get you home, he's willing for you to go through it. That's a tough lesson. That's a tough lesson. And here it is. Jesus, he says, please let me go with you. In verse 19, Jesus did not let him, but he tells him to do this. He says, go home to your own people and tell them how much the Lord has done for you and how he has had mercy on you. That's pretty simple, isn't it? What did he tell him? He says, listen, you need to go study theology for 5 to 10 years. And then after you've done all that stuff and you've got the right paperwork, then it's okay to go start telling people about Jesus. No. Jesus says, listen, here's what I want you to do. And you can do this with an hour of time spent with Jesus. Here it is. Go home, because that's where ministry starts, right? Go home and tell those people that know you and love you, that have known you all your life, this is what Jesus did in my life. Here's how he's had mercy on me. So this guy does. He goes, verse 20, so the man went away and began to tell in the Decapolis, which, by the way, the Decapolis is a word, it's a region, it's an area of 10 cities near this area where the boat had landed. So he goes to the Decapolis and he starts doing this. He goes to his people and he does what this simple thing Jesus told him to do on a massive scale. And he tells everybody in the Decapolis, and they're all kind of going, we've heard about you. Like, you were a scary dude. Like, and they hear him preaching and they listen to him. And the thing is what this looks like at the end of this scene, right, is Jesus says, no, go tell people, and then he floats away, right? I don't know if the disciples are probably rowing a little extra, I would say, but they row away, right? And if you just stop the story there, that's a pretty good story. Cool. You know, this guy, he went and told Jesus about some people, they told some people about some Jesus. There you go. And he goes to the Decapolis, he does all that stuff. And it says there, the people were amazed at how much, what Jesus has done for him, right? That's verse 20. There it is. Here's the thing that you may not know. The next time Jesus comes back to this area, instead of asking him to leave, they show up by the thousands to hear what he has to say. By the thousands. You remember, okay, so there's the feeding of the 5,000. It's not that one. But there's also the feeding of the 4,000. Okay, it's a different feeding, right? Still kind of a loaves and fish sort of thing, right? But the next time Jesus comes up, he feeds the 4,000 in this area. So here's what I want you to think about. The thing is about the 4,000, you got to understand with those numbers, they're only counting men. They're not counting women or children. I mean, you're talking 10 to 12,000 people that showed up in force to hear what Jesus had to say, to hear what a guy who they had asked to leave had to say. The whole reason they show up to hear what Jesus has to say is because of this guy's testimony. What would happen if all of us just did that simple thing? What if instead of making excuses and making it complicated and telling people and God all the reasons why it's not for us, like we can't do this, we're just not built for this, right? What if instead of doing all that and making all these excuses, what if we just went to people that we knew and loved, or just knew, because there's some of them that are difficult, right? What if we just went to the people around us and told them what God has done for us? You know, we build a relationship, we got that whole thing. They ask us questions about why we're different, and we tell them, this is what God's done for me, and this is how he's had mercy on me. That's ministry, that's missions, that's you evangelizing, right? Those are big fancy church words, but it's really simple stuff, isn't it? Go home to your own people. Tell them how much the Lord has done for you and how he's had mercy on you. And this one guy who a couple of weeks ago had been naked, running around, possessed by demons, becomes one of the most successful missionary evangelists in the Bible because he did these two simple things. There's a lot more than one of us here. And if God can do that with one guy being faithful and doing that stuff, what can he do with all of us doing that stuff? Do you feel unqualified to be a missionary? Join the club, right? I mean, God saved me from death and sin. He called me into ministry, and through the highs of ministry and life and the lows, through baptizing and ordaining kids from my ministry to the death of my mom, through that gamut of emotions and experiences, God has never left our side. That's what he's done for me. That's how he's had mercy on me. What's your story? You may not think it's impressive. It doesn't have to be. You're not trying to impress people with your story. You're trying to impress people with what God has done, right? You're trying to impress people with what God can do in their lives, to give them hope for the future. We're all called to ministry, evangelism, and missions. We're all called to that. There's no way around it. The Great Commission doesn't give any of us a pass, right? Jesus didn't say, unless you're busy, right? Go make disciples unless it's hard, unless it's complicated, unless it makes you feel weird. He didn't say that. He said, go make disciples. He says, I've given you hope. Go give it away. I've given you forgiveness. Go give it away. I've given you the water of life. Go spill on everybody. So this morning, I want to end with this. I got this buddy in every service, and it gets annoying actually, but he does it every service. He asks two questions, and they sound like the same question, but they're not. And the question is this: what are you going to do with Jesus? That's the first question. And that question, I'm talking to you guys who have been here for years. You know Jesus. You've got a relationship with him. You've been a Christian for years and years and years and years. Then my question to you this morning is this: what are you going to do with Jesus? He's given you hope. He's given you forgiveness. He's given you peace. What are you going to do with it? If you are a follower of Christ, you have been called into service. what are you going to do? And then my second question is this: what are you going to do with Jesus? And that question is for anybody sitting out there this morning who maybe doesn't have a relationship with Jesus. Maybe you're sitting here today and you're going, I don't know what this guy's talking about. He's weird, right? It might be more of you than I'm hoping, but some of you guys are sitting here this morning and you don't have a relationship with Jesus, and we're talking about this hope and this peace and this forgiveness, and you haven't experienced it yet. My question for you this morning is, what are you going to do with Jesus? He has come into this life. He's come into this world to give you life and give it abundantly. He's come to forgive your sins. He came and he died and he bled and he rose again. He's coming back again. What are you going to do with Jesus?